Imagine waking up one morning and realizing one simple thing. You have no idea where you are. Yesterday, you were walking with your group. Then you noticed the tracks of an animal. You stepped away for just a few minutes. Then you looked up, and no one was there. No people, no camp, no smoke from the fire, just trees in every direction, all looking the same. Today, you would simply take out your phone, open a map, see the little blue dot, and within a few minutes, you'd find your way back. But 50,000 years ago, there was no blue dot. If an ancient human got lost, it wasn't just an inconvenience. It could become one of the most dangerous situations of their life. And the real question wasn't whether they could find their way home. The question was whether they could do it before hunger, cold, or their own mistakes killed them. First, it's important to understand one thing. Ancient humans rarely traveled alone. They almost always moved in groups, small groups, usually between 20 and 50 people. The group was everything. It provided protection, it helped gather food, it looked after the children, it cared for the sick. One person was far weaker than an entire community. So getting lost didn't just mean losing your way, it meant suddenly losing your entire support system for survival. The greatest danger didn't appear immediately. The first few hours were usually calm. A person would try to remember the route, walk back the way they came, look around, search for familiar landmarks. The real problems began later, because the human brain is surprisingly poor at navigating unfamiliar terrain. Even today, people who are convinced they're walking in a straight line often begin drifting into circles without realizing it. Studies show that without reliable landmarks, people gradually stray farther and farther off course, especially in dense forests or in bad weather. In other words, the harder a lost person tried to escape, the farther they might wander from the place they actually needed to reach. But why was it so difficult to find the way back? After all, ancient humans spent their entire lives in nature. Weren't they much better at navigation than we are? In fact, they were. Far better. They constantly noticed details that most modern people ignore. The position of the sun, the direction of the wind, hills, rivers, the patterns of vegetation, animal tracks, even individual rocks could serve as landmarks. But there was one problem. All of that knowledge worked only within familiar territory. If someone wandered too far beyond the lands they knew, even their experience began to lose its value. Now imagine another problem. Evening arrives, the sun sets, the temperature begins to fall. Now you have to make a decision. Do you keep searching in the dark, or stop and make camp for the night? Today, that choice seems simple, but for an ancient human, night was a completely different world. There were no flashlights, no lights glowing from windows, no roads. After sunset, the world was swallowed by darkness. In some places, you could see only a few meters ahead. That's why most people avoided traveling at night, unless they absolutely had to. The risk of injury increased dramatically, and an injury could be fatal, especially injuries to the feet or legs. That might sound surprising, but a sprained ankle or a deep cut was far more dangerous than it seems. Today, such an injury means a few weeks of inconvenience. Back then, it could mean the end. Without the ability to walk properly, a person could no longer hunt, gather food, escape danger, or keep up with the group. That's why many researchers believe that one of the ancient humans' greatest priorities wasn't finding the way home as quickly as possible. It was avoiding mistakes that would make the situation even worse. But the most serious problem usually appeared after several days: food. Most modern people rarely think about finding something to eat. We simply open the refrigerator, but for ancient humans, getting food already required enormous effort. Now imagine you're lost. You have no group, no shared supplies, no help from other hunters. Every hour begins working against you. Even if edible plants are all around you, you still need to know which ones are safe. One mistake could lead to poisoning. And poisoning when you're alone becomes yet another deadly threat. Yet hunger wasn't always the greatest enemy. Often water was even more dangerous, or rather, the lack of it. A person can survive without food for quite a long time. But without water, the situation changes much more quickly, especially in hot climates. That's why a lost person would almost certainly search for water before searching for food. A stream, a river, a spring, anything. And here's an interesting detail. Water could do more than save your life. It could help you find other people. Human groups often settled near sources of water. By following a river, a lost person increased the chances of encountering another group, or even finding their own. But what about predators? Many people imagine that a lost human immediately became prey for lions or saber-toothed cats. Reality was a bit more complicated. Most large predators didn't hunt humans at the first opportunity. They didn't want to risk getting injured either. However, a lone person looked far more vulnerable than a group, especially at night, especially if they were exhausted or injured. Losing the protection of the group made a person a much more attractive target. That's why many ancient communities placed enormous importance on avoiding unnecessary separation. But does all of this mean that a lost person was doomed? Not necessarily. Humans are remarkably well adapted for survival. We can remember landscapes, recognize landmarks, build shelters, find water, and make decisions even under intense stress. What's more, archaeological evidence shows that humans successfully spread across vast territories over tens of thousands of years. They crossed deserts, mountains, forests, and entire continents. That would have been impossible if every lost person had died. Many found their way back. Others joined new groups. Some may even have become the first people to explore completely unknown lands. Even so, getting lost remained one of the most terrifying things that could happen, because the ancient world worked very differently. Today, if you lose your way, you're surrounded by roads, cities, maps, communication, and millions of other people. Back then, almost nothing stood between a human being and the wilderness. That's why losing your way wasn't simply a question of direction. It was a question of survival. And sometimes, a question of whether you would ever see your loved ones again.